The morning star like any other, until I saw it. A shiny Bentley parked right across my barn door, blocking my tractor. Karen stood there smirking, daring me to do something about it. So I did. I climbed into my old John Deere, fired up the engine, and before she knew it, her luxury toy met the full force of farm steel. Out here, you don't block survival. Not with... I stared at that car for a long minute, the sun bouncing off its hood, and I swear I could hear my blood pressure rising. I set the feed bucket down and walked closer, my boots crunching against the gravel. Karen didn't flinch. She just tilted her sunglasses down and gave me a look that said, "Yes, I did this. And yes, I dare you to challenge me." The morning star like any other, until I saw it. A shiny Bentley, parked right across my barn door, blocking the only way I could get my tractor out. The chrome gleamed. The tires looked fresh in the showroom. And leaning against it was Karen, our self-appointed HOA queen, smirking like she owned the place. That wasn't just parking, it was a declaration of war. Asterisk, my name's Tom, and I've spent all my 52 years working this land. To some people, it might look like just dirt, timber, and old fences, but to me, it's everything. It's the story of my family, the sweat of my father, the lessons of my grandfather, and the heartbeat of generations that came before me. Every crack in the barns would tell a story. Every fence post holds a memory. And every acre carries the weight of people who refused to give up when times got hard. I can still see my father, hammer in hand, building this barn board by board. He wasn't a rich man. He wasn't even what you'd call lucky. But he had grit. He had the kind of hands that never stopped working, the kind of spirit that never gave up. My grandfather was the same way. He taught me how to mend fences when I was just a boy, before I could even reach the top rail without climbing. I remember walking behind him in the fields, watching how he worked with patience, never rushing, never cutting corners. Those men didn't just teach me how to farm. They taught me how to live. This land, it isn't just property. It's heritage. It's roots. It's where my family laughed around fire pits, where we weathered storms that tore roofs off, and where we rebuilt after floods tried to wipe us out. Out here, the seasons are more than just weather. They're life itself. Spring means hope, summer means sweat, fall means harvest, and winter means survival. And for me, every single season has started the same way, by walking through that barn door. That door isn't just wood and hinges. It's the gateway to my life. Behind it waits the tractor, the cattle feed, the tools that keep this farm breathing. Block that door, and you choke the farm itself. Now, people used to understand that. Neighbors back in the day knew what it meant to farm. They waved from tractors, not SUVs. They stopped to lend a hand if a fence went down or if a storm knocked out power. We didn't measure each other by manicured lawns or shiny cars. We measured each other by grit, by honesty, by whether or not we'd show up when someone needed help. But then came the HOA. It started slowly. Families from the city moving out here, lured by cheaper taxes and the idea of country charm. At first, I thought nothing of it. Let them have their granite countertops and shiny kitchens. But then they started bringing rules. Rules about fences. Rules about barns. Rules about livestock and noise. Rules that didn't belong out here. And leading that parade of clipboards and bylaws was Karen, the so-called queen of the community. To people like her, my land isn't heritage. It's an eyesore. My barn isn't history. It's unsightly. My rooster isn't tradition. It's a noise violation. They look at my way of life and see a problem. But me? I look at them and see outsiders who'll never understand what it takes to keep a farm alive. And that's where the clash began. Asterisk. Karen wasn't just any HOA president. She was the type of person who lived for rules. Rules she didn't create, but enforced like scripture. To her, a clipboard was more powerful than sheriff's badge, and she carried it like a weapon. I'll never forget the first day she came onto my land. She stood in front of my barn, nose wrinkled like she had just stepped into a garbage dump, and in the coldest, most disgusted tone she could muster, she said, "This structure is unsightly. It doesn't meet our community's aesthetic standards." I laughed, out loud, because this unsightly structure had stood through storms, floods, droughts, even a tornado. My father built it. My grandfather worked in it. That barn had more history than any of the cookie-cutter houses in our cul-de-sac. But to Karen, heritage wasn't measured in sweat and years. Heritage was probably whatever designer handbag she passed down from one season to the next. From that moment on, I knew exactly what kind of neighbor she was going to be. And I wasn't wrong. The complaints started rolling in like clockwork. First, it was my rooster. Apparently, he crowed too early and ruined her meditation routine. I told her the rooster didn't own a watch. She didn't laugh. Next, it was my hay bales. I stacked them too close to the property line, she said. Then it was the smell of manure, too strong. The sound of tractors, too loud. Even the dust that lingered after harvest was apparently unacceptable. And it didn't stop with words. Karen was relentless. She stormed into my yard during hay season, clipboard in hand, demanding that I tarp my bales because they were an eyesore from the road. I looked her straight in the eye and asked if she also wanted me to put curtains on my cows. Still no laugh. She wasn't wired for humor, only control. The worst part? The HOA board bent to her every whim. Most of them were her friends, other suburban transplants who moved out here thinking farming was picturesque, like something they saw on a postcard. They wanted red barns without the smell of manure, tractors without the noise, animals without the dirt, farming without the reality. And since Karen had them wrapped around her finger, every complaint became an official notice. Every notice came with a fine. And every fine was another way of pushing me closer to the edge. But here's the thing. I'm not a man who backs down easy. I patched my fences. I kept my dogs on my land. I even stopped blasting Johnny Cash on Saturday mornings, though that one hurt. I did everything I could to keep the peace, even though it meant biting my tongue more than once. But peace wasn't what Karen wanted. She wanted control. She wanted me gone. I started hearing her whispers at board meetings. Little comments like, maybe Tom should consider selling. A modern development could raise property values. She'd say it with a smile, like she was doing me a favor. But I knew what she really meant. She wanted my land flattened, paved over, turned into yet another subdivision with names like Whispering Pines or Golden Meadows. She didn't see my farm as history. She saw it as profit waiting to be cashed in. And the more I resisted, the harder she pushed. Every letter in my mailbox, every notice nailed to my fence post, every smug look from across the cul-de-sac. It was all part of her campaign. This wasn't about bylaws anymore. This was personal. For me, the land was life. For Karen, the land was leverage. And that's why, when I walked out one morning to see her Bentley sprawled across my barn door, I knew it wasn't just a car in the wrong place. It was the ultimate move in her little game of power. She wanted to prove that her rules, her authority, her shiny car meant more than my farm, my heritage, my survival. But here's the mistake Karen made. She thought I was just some stubborn old farmer clinging to the past. She didn't realize that every storm I had weathered, every fight I had won, every piece of this land I had held on to, it all made me a man who doesn't break easy. And if she wanted war, she was about to find out that out here, survival isn't written in bylaws. It's written in blood, sweat, and grit. Asterisk that morning. The sun had barely climbed over the treetops when I stepped out with a bucket of feed in my hand. The air smelled like dew and fresh earth, the kind of morning that makes a farmer grateful for another day. But the second I turned the corner toward the barn, my boots froze in the dirt. There it was, a Bentley, gleaming like it had rolled straight out of the showroom. The chrome nearly blinded me when the sunlight hit it, the tires still shining with fresh polish. And where was it parked? Not in a driveway, not in some neat little cul-de-sac parking spot. No, this luxury beast was sprawled right across my barn door, blocking the only entrance I had to get my tractor out, my lifeline, my heartbeat, my survival. And leaning against it, arms crossed, sunglasses on, sipping her iced latte like she was in some glossy magazine ad was Karen. The queen of the HOA, standing on my farm like she owned it. She didn't have to say a word. The smirk on her face said it all. What are you going to do about it? Now, If you've never lived on a farm, maybe you don't understand what it means to block a barn door. It's not like blocking a garage where you can just wait a few hours. That barn door is the start of everything. My tractor needs to get out for hauling feed, moving hay, fixing fences, plowing fields. Behind that door is equipment, tools, and feed for cattle that can't wait. You block that door, you're not just blocking wooden hinges. You're choking the farm. You're messing with survival. "Morning, Tom," she said, voice dripping with smug sweetness. "Lovely day, isn't it?" I didn't answer right away. I just kept walking until I stood a few feet away, the reflection of my old barn flickering across her Bentley's polished surface. Finally, I asked, calm but sharp, "What's your car do in front of my barn?" Her smirk widened. "Oh, this?" she said casually, waving her hand like it was nothing. I had a little meeting with some of the board members, and there wasn't enough space on the road, so I figured this spot works just fine. It's not like you're in a hurry to use it, are you? Not in a hurry? By that point, my cattle were already mooing from the pasture, waiting on feed. My tractor sat locked behind that door like a prisoner. Every minute wasted meant more work piling up, more strain on the land, more frustration. And she knew it. That was the point. I took a deep breath. "Karen," I said, "move your car now." She sipped her latte, slow, deliberate, like she had all the time in the world. "You know, Tom," she finally said, "sometimes I think this farm of yours causes more problems than it's worth. Maybe if you didn't rely so much on outdated methods, you wouldn't be so easily inconvenienced." That was it. She wasn't just parking a car. She was sending a message. She wanted me gone. She wanted to prove that her shiny car and her HOA rules had more power than my barn, my land, my life. And in that moment, staring at her Bentley sitting like a blockade across my livelihood, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about parking anymore. This wasn't even about bylaws or complaints. This was a challenge. She wanted to break me, but she had no idea what kind of man she was dealing with. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Karen, let me tell you something. Out here, that barn isn't just a building. It's survival. My father built it with his hands. My grandfather taught me to run it. Every day of my life starts with that door opening. You block it, you block me. And I don't take kindly to people trying to block me." Her smile faltered for just a second, but then she straightened, hiding behind those sunglasses again. "Well, maybe it's time to think about selling. You know, progress. Imagine what this land could be if it weren't so rustic. Progress. That word rolled off her tongue like it was a gift, but to me, it sounded like a death sentence. Progress meant bulldozers tearing through my oaks and maples. Progress meant my barn flattened into dust. Progress meant rows of cookie-cutter houses with names like Golden Meadows, where kids played on manicured lawns and no one ever smelled manure. I clenched my fists. My whole life, I had played by nature's rules. Storms, droughts, floods. I had fought through every one of them. But this was different. This wasn't nature. This was someone thinking a luxury car and a clipboard could erase generations of blood and sweat. I looked her straight in the eye, and with every ounce of calm I had left, I said, "Move the car." And then there was silence, just the sound of the wind through the trees, the cattle lowing in the distance, and the ticking of the Bentley's cooling engine. For a long moment, it was a standoff. Her smirk, my stare, her car, my barn, two worlds colliding in one small patch of gravel. But here's what Karen didn't know. Out here, farmers don't break. We bend. We struggle. We bleed. But we don't break. And if she wanted a war, she had just parked the first shot right in front of my barn door. Asterisk. Asterisk. The silence between us stretched like barbed wire. Karen didn't budge, and neither did I. My cattle were getting restless. The barn still locked behind that glossy blockade of hers. Finally, she sighed dramatically and set her half-finished latte on the Bentley's roof. "You know, Tom, you could just walk away. Sell this place. Save yourself the headache. People like me were the future. People like you, well, let's just say the world doesn't wait for anyone stuck in the past." Her words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch, because deep down I knew something she didn't. You can pave over land, you can build houses, you can park your fancy cars, but you can't erase roots. And my roots ran deeper than any HOA meeting agenda. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. Karen, let me make one thing crystal clear. This farm has stood for generations. It's weathered storms you can't imagine, floods that wiped out half the valley, droughts that nearly starved us. And every single time we rebuilt. Because land doesn't quit, and neither do the people who work it. So you can smirk, you can sip your coffee, you can hide behind your rules, but you will not block my barn. Not today. Not ever. She shifted uncomfortably, her polished confidence cracking just slightly. For a brief second, I saw it, the realization that maybe she had pushed too far. But before I could say another word, she slid back into her Bentley, the leather creaking as the door shut with a hollow thud. The engine purred to life, that expensive machine humming like a predator ready to strike. Slowly, deliberately, she eased it forward, the tires crunching against gravel, until the barn door stood clear once more. She didn't roll down the window. She didn't offer an apology. She just threw one last glance in the rearview mirror and sped off down the lane, dust kicking up behind her like smoke after a battle. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, staring at the space she'd left. The barn door was free again, but I knew this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't the type to back down for good. No, this was only round one. She'd be back, with new tricks, new tactics, new ways to test me. But here's the thing about people like Karen. They underestimate folks like me. They see an old barn, a beat-up tractor, a farmer with mud on his boots, and they think that means weakness. But what they don't see is the grit, the quiet fire, the unshakable will to protect what matters, no matter what it costs. As I opened that barn door and stepped inside, the sunlight streaming across the hay bales and the smell of earth rising up to meet me, I realized something. This wasn't just about land anymore. This was about standing up for history, for hard work, for roots that run deeper than any luxury car. Karen thought she could block me with a Bentley. Big mistake. Asterisk. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a good showdown, and subscribe for more gripping tales just like this. Because trust me, Karen's not finished yet.